You're all very welcome. Thank you so much for coming out tonight on this fantastic get-together on Time to Talk Day. So my role is to get you talking this evening after two wonderful films. Thank you very much, guys. Do you want to kick us off at all and just tell us what it feels like now that you've watched the film on Time to Talk Day?
Sure. Yeah. I actually felt quite proud of it. I felt like I was going to be quite like want to run away, but you know, I'm like fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. I got an awful lot out of it. Did folks in the audience as well? Yeah, just brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, am I supposed to talk? I'll just agree with Nick. It was definitely one of those moments where I thought I was gonna kind of panic or just not want to come. But in my hotel room, I actually felt really confident about it. And I guess first and foremost, I just want to specify that I have no issue with alcohol or people drinking or anything like that. I didn't want it to seem so militant that I was against it or anything like that. I have no problem with anybody else drinking or indulging. I think it's amazing, but I just can't. So anyways, thank you.
Was making the film, was that a bit of a helpful process to go through, as well as the recovery journey you've both had already with professionals and other support in your friend network?
I'll let you go first.
All right. I mean, I thought so. I thought in a way, I've already I'm pretty open about this type of stuff to my friends and anybody that asks me about it. And I feel like on social media and stuff, I try not to put it out there too much, but I feel like if you genuinely know me well enough, you kind of know. But doing the video, I thought just seeing the rough cut, I didn't actually ever get to see the full thing. So now that I've seen the whole thing, it's kind of more liberating and very proud of it. And I guess again, just kind of to be able to be a part of Ben Raemers Foundation and today specifically and everything, it's just a good feeling. Happy to be here.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, similar.
Can I just pick up on that one point? A big thing for me and my recovery has been learning to accept myself and love myself a bit more. And that message came across in both your films as well. Is that something, the journey you've been on as well?
Yeah, I don't think I love myself yet, annoyingly, but I am definitely way more accepting just because I had to go through a process of just such extreme frustration with not being able to solve an issue that I thought I could using logic or something, or just other people's opinions, that I've actually had to just learn through a process of bearing it, that acceptance is the best way forward. Basically. I don't know.
There was a couple of points that came out in your film, in both of them actually, I think, but especially in yours, Nick, that just accepting what you can't control, and maybe that makes things better. That if you're not going to skate tomorrow,
yeah, I think me and Vaughan were talking about it a bit earlier actually. Just I think a lot of creative and people that skaters often are kind of perfectionists a little bit, and there's often the relationship between being perfectionist and this not being able to achieve that, and then also when you start to have issues that you didn't expect you were going to have, it's kind of counter to your idea of being someone who you've got in your mind, and so it's very frustrating, and it's no, I don't want to have problems, I'm a strong person. So I think learning to see a different side of yourself that's really vulnerable and weak is just fucking hard, basically.
I think no doubt it's very hard to accept that at first. The impression I was getting through both the films is though that you're stronger people having gone through the journey that you have gone through. Do you feel that?
I mean, I would say so to an extent. You know what I mean? I would agree with Nick again. I'm not necessarily at like the level of achievement of completely loving myself entirely, unfortunately. But I see the progression, and I see through like I do the same type of therapy that Nick does, cognitive behavioral therapy, and the comfortability of being in my own skin. And like I used to personally depersonalize a lot, which if anyone's not familiar with that, it's basically you got way too stoned, or if you were looking down at yourself in like a 2D, like a, what's a good, like, oh, I can't think of it, the video game where you're driving around and, thank you, like in Grand Theft Auto. So I used to depersonalize a lot, but through cognitive behavioral therapy and psychoanalysis, I learned to understand the way that I was feeling, and I was kind of able to control that. And like through that process, you know, I've been able to learn to like alleviate anxiety more, and definitely feeling better about myself, you know, through this process. But it's just not like, you know, it's been 2 years that I've stopped drinking, and that's where I started my path or whatever. But it's still, I mean, unfortunately, it's a day-to-day struggle. You know, I can't say like that I'll ever be cured, or that like right now, like, oh, everything's great and perfect, you know. So.
Yeah, and it's the same here. I think every day is a new day, right, which is positive, but also brings its own struggles, and recovery is more of a journey than a destination that we get to, you know. Yeah, that's how I find it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Vaughan, what came out for you in the two films you've watched?
It's actually pretty funny because I'm really familiar with Aaron and Nick. You know, I've been with Aaron in a bar. I've definitely been with Nick in a room with his duvet. So I'm familiar with both of these guys. I'm familiar with both of these guys' stories. So for me, it's great to see them speak out, especially on such a really important topic these days. Skateboarding's full of like highs and lows for sure, and it's hard to manage those for each of us. I think on so many different levels. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, but I do believe that these two guys aren't the only two people in the room that share this same awareness of themselves at times. Myself too. I'm so proud of these two for being able to speak so honestly about like a personal struggle in the way that they have.
What I think is funny too is like the first example I give of like psychosis in my video was through like kind of sleep deprivation and a lot of emotion that I was having. But then I was in Barcelona at the time, and this is when I first met Vaughan. And through that, I literally am like, oh, I'm going to extend my ticket for 2 weeks. Like, I'm going to keep drinking damn lemons all day. I'm going to keep living the Barcelona life and not sleeping and skating the whole time. So, like, I would say firsthand, Vaughan saw sides of me that were definitely like, because at the time, too, I was like, I can't sleep. I bought these books, and I was trying to express myself to him and with some of my teammates. And not that Vaughan was ever negative, but some of the other guys were just like, yeah, you're crazy.
Which kind of comes round to being able to listen. When someone's brave enough to talk about what they're feeling, talk about what's going on for them, about their worries, their fears, anxieties, what they're feeling down about, what they can't control, it's often very difficult to know what to say and how to support that person. So we'll maybe ask you about that.
I think if I want to add, in terms of what mental health means to everyone, and I think it's so important to show that 1 in 4 people may suffer from a mental illness one time in their life. So that's like, thinking about 1/4 of the people even in this room may go through something in their life that affects them to that extent where they need that mental health support. And it's quite evident by watching the videos today that, in the community itself, like skateboarding community here itself, you've got people to turn to, and listening is a huge step to, making sure we all listen to each other about what mental health conditions there are, learning through that and seeing whether you can support the person or not. Because sometimes it's not about being an expert, it's more about just listening, because you don't need to be an expert to do that. And, you know, having your family and friends around you, having that community around you, you may be able to find the right person that kind of understands you, not necessarily can give you that therapeutic support, but just to be able to understand what you're going through makes a huge difference to having that support, I would say.
I mean, we are like a very small community. I feel like every single person in this room is linked by one particular thing, and that's our skateboard. We see each other at skate spots. You know, we know who each other are. We're very privileged to be able to be like singular in that one thing that we have. And you know, we are all friends. There are no indifferences between us, and we should always stick together.
Yeah, and a message that came through for me in both the films was that if the community can just be more accepting of individuals, we've got this commonality of loving skateboarding. We do the same thing, but just being respectful that everyone will be a bit different. So the three key things that have helped me really feel connection and empathy when I've talked to people in my life, if I sum them up, are they've created safety and trust, they've listened carefully to what I had to say, and they didn't judge. So that's three simple things you can do to make your listening effective and really let someone feel that empathy if they're choosing to talk to you, feel that human connection. That's what it's all about, just not feeling alone whenever you choose to share what you're feeling at your most vulnerable moment. Shall we have some questions from the floor at the moment? Break for that? Excellent. Any questions on the floor?
Okay.
I think it will come on in a second.
Will it? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so maybe slightly different from you guys. My question stems from skateboarding being a coping mechanism of its own, and not having envy on guys who are expected to skateboard, and you guys are expected to produce a certain level of skateboarding. But do you see skateboarding being that it can be a coping mechanism that is like, so when you link it to mindfulness and your outlet, but then you guys have got expectations to be up to a certain standard and produce certain level of skateboarding. I treat it to myself, I've had previous mental health issues, and skateboarding to me is my get out clause, and I feel for you guys who can't use it that way. There's not really a question there, but I'm just...
I'll give my insight. I would completely agree. Up to a certain age, skateboarding was always like an outlet or some type of way to like relieve my stress or whatever. But I guess the career aspect of it, like when you have structure, I guess, and I miss the most in skating is like working 5 days a week and then having Saturday and Sunday to like truly appreciate skateboarding, because then I felt like those days I got my week's worth of whatever like out of me, whereas now on a trip, if I'm expected to skate and I have something on my mind, typically it's harder for me to skate because of what's on my mind, and then that's where like fortunately, like the tools that I've learned, or like simply just putting my phone away, can be so easy, or like just writing my thoughts down to try to alleviate that so I can focus. But it comes and goes for me personally. But I would like to get to a point in my life where skateboarding is 100% my outlet for everything, But yeah.
Being a professional skateboarder definitely varies so much from your day-to-day job. It is your source of income. And to Aaron's point, you do have like a lot of downtime, and it is. And I feel like from my experience and people that I've known and myself too, like that downtime can spiral into all sorts of different problems. And it's hard to maintain. It can be hard to maintain for sure. Everybody's together on the trip, but there's so much testosterone going on. It's, if you're having a problem, you can easily find yourself an outsider for sure. And it's so different to like how you would play it as a hobby, like you said for yourself, how it helped you. Like when it's at that level, you're using that to get away from your day-to-day stuff. But on the flip side, it's like the opposite when you are on that level, and what do you do to get away from skateboarding almost, and like that's the crux of the issue sometimes. And I guess
I mean the amount of like, and it's never anything against like my teammates or anybody like personal or culturally anything like that, but or against food or anything, but I've whatever, being vegan and stuff like that, I've realized it's easier for me to go eat alone than like bum myself out and bum everybody else out. And it's also easier for me if I'm on a skate trip, I'm in a van for 10, 12 hours with 12 people, I'm just going to be like, hey guys, like for one night or one day, I'm just going to go and like do this. Or like, I'm going to go venture off and like go do my own thing for a couple hours. It's nothing personal, it's nothing against anybody. It's just like what I have to do. And it's gotten to the point now, like with skating for Converse, and I've been so open with my teammates and like, just everything that's transpired in the past couple years and last year, that it's like we were in Russia and we were all about to take cabs back, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna walk back, and they're like, no, we'll go with you. Oh wait, no, it's cool. Like you're doing your thing, and it was like it felt so nice, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not anymore like, yeah, I don't feel that way. I don't know. I guess it's just nice now. There's a lot more acceptance, and like you try to find the solitude outside of skateboarding when you're in the career side of it. Like something as simple as going for a walk that you never would do in your hometown. You're all of a sudden taking walks every morning because you have jet lag or like something's going on.
I think there's a few things you picked up there which I've seen as themes with other people in the research, but just experience from people, that often a lot of simple things actually work, like just writing down how you're feeling, going for a simple walk. I do 2 sun salutations every morning when my first espresso pot of coffee is on the stove, and that's just my little me time in the kitchen floor and preparing my espresso machine. That's me time. And if I'm away on a trip and don't get that, I'm a little thrown out, but I can do other things to make time for myself and get just what I need. Being open and honest about it is normalizing the conversation, and it is becoming more normal, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Are guys talking more on trips with you, Vaughan?
Yeah. Well, most certainly. I mean, I don't really want to like pinpoint but so much. But yeah, most certainly. I mean, I look after these people. They are my friends, and they rely on me to be there for them when they need me. And sometimes I don't have all the answers, but to the point, be there to listen. Don't judge, just listen. Don't even try and speak. Just let that person say their piece, and at least then at that point they get the opportunity to get that problem off their mind. If you have an experience or something that you feel that you're familiar with there, then of course you have room to help. But sometimes some people don't want the help. They just want to open up and let you hear what's inside. And I guess that's more important sometimes than trying to force it out of them. Just, I don't know, wait, be ready to hear.
Half the time you won't even like act or try to get expect a response. You just want to say it, and then you can just skate away, and that's like all you really need. You don't necessarily need the person to be like, oh well, this is my viewpoint. That you just simply just be your ventor for the moment, and then
exactly, you've got it out of your system that way, and it's just great that they've received it and not felt they've had to say anything. Fantastic. Being a paramedic, coming from a physical first aid background, mental health is really the same, in that an early intervention, just when someone's dipped down slightly, an early intervention has a much better outcome for long-term health, and prevention is better than cure. So opening up about these things early, we will maybe just have a little dip down and come back up, rather than letting them spiral downwards on an ever-decreasing circle. Shall we take another question from the floor? I'm sure there's plenty. Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be put in touch with a therapist just as things were getting really bad. And like you say about sort of liking yourself a bit more and expressing yourself. And that was really helpful, and I'm in a better place. But I've had a couple of mates that they've only got so far as saying, I'm messed up, I'm going to the doctors and I'm going to get medication. And then they're not talking any more than that. And I worry for them in terms of kind of unlocking those underlying issues and expressing themselves further. Do you have any advice to kind of get through to them when someone's in that spot? Because, you know, it's sort of, you're saying be there to listen and let people express themselves. And I want to...
I had this exact same thing with Ben, and he would call me and he'd be like, Louise, like, I fucking hate myself, like I can't do this anymore. And he'd be like in turmoil, he'd be spiraling out of control. And then the next day he'd be like, it just brushed under the carpet. And I kick myself every day because I didn't want to put him in an awkward place by saying the next day, are you okay? Like, how are you feeling? And I think above everything, I should have just pursued it and been like, it's uncomfortable, it's so uncomfortable. And it's like when someone's in that place and they bring it up and then you feel like almost like awkward saying anything, I think the best thing is just to pursue things and just keep, there's no harm with saying to someone, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And if the next day they're like, oh my God, like, oh no, I'm okay. Just be like, look, like, this is serious. Like, I want to help. And don't be afraid just to push things. So from my perspective with Ben, one thing I wish I had done is I wish I'd done it more, because I felt like I didn't want to make him the next day. Obviously, he had, like, with alcohol and stuff, it's all, I didn't want to embarrass him. But actually, I would put myself feeling awkward any day over losing him. So don't be afraid the next day just to keep pushing things. It's all you can do, I think. And yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
I'd also say that, sorry. Also, too, definitely agreeing with Lucy, but, like, you know, if the person, like, not to throw her under the bus, I love you. My girlfriend struggles with mental health issues, and there are times where I'm pressing the issue, and I'm getting personally frustrated because she's not wanting to voice it. And there are times where she does voice what is going on, but I need to, I guess what also is helping me with cognitive behavioral therapy is learning to not get frustrated with the person when they're not wanting to be open with me. Because there are times where she's totally willing and, like, she's like, oh, I'm fine, or, you know, I'm not feeling great, I don't want to talk about it. But there are a lot of times, for whatever reason, I feel like it's my fault, to where I'm like, why aren't you talking to me? Like, why aren't you telling me? And I just need to understand that, like, that might not be the right time. But I would agree, though, to press the issue, even if they're not willing to talk about it, kind of just, like, continually check up on the person, you know, even if it frustrates them. You know, they're still your friend, and it only shows that you love them. So.
I just want to add, in Mind and Tower Hamlets in Newham, what we really try to encourage is for people to understand signs and symptoms of somebody becoming unwell, because sometimes there are people that suffer in silence, and they won't necessarily come up to you and say, this is how I'm feeling, but you will notice certain cues, you will notice certain symptoms and signs that actually that person's maybe unwell. And those are the times maybe you bring up the conversation first before they come and approach you, because that could just maybe open up that person to telling you exactly how they're feeling. And sometimes not to wait for that person to come to you. So that's quite important to really take on board. So when I say recognizing the signs and symptoms, actually learning yourself, what they are. For example, like knowing that, that person, when they do it, always maybe late to something, late to meeting you, or maybe when they come to you and they're like teary, talking about certain things or certain things going on in their life. You might not, sometimes they may not share certain things with you, like a bereavement in their family, who maybe they might have meant so much to them, but they don't want to share that with you. There might be a reason for that. And not everybody's going to want to disclose how they're feeling, but if you're the first person to bring that up, then maybe, they're going to be opening that up for you to ask more questions later on. And I hope that answers your question.
Hey, so I think a key message there is really to keep showing up for people. Try to create that safety and trust. It's the person you care about. It's their choice if they're going to open up to you or someone else, and it's their choice when to do it. But if you keep showing up with the message that you can talk to me, I will listen. And a clear thing that you just said, Lucy, if you're not sure what to say, I care about you, I want to help. That's why I'm asking you about this. And a lot of the guys in the room, a big message is to ask twice how someone is. We can all ask just, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Are you really okay? That is another really simple thing to do, but that'll just make some people stop and actually think, God, maybe I can speak to this person. Maybe I can open up and get this off my chest. So please keep showing up for those that you care about and that you've seen the signs and symptoms. Mind have a fantastic load of resources on their website. There's loads of information you can access there about signs and symptoms, all kind of help they have available. Please access that if this evening has made you think about someone or in your life or how you're feeling yourself. There's loads of great resources there. Just one thing further on that, I think, if you're worried that someone might be thinking about taking their own life, it's proven that it's great to ask the direct question about suicide, to use that word, to ask them directly, are they thinking about suicide? That creates safety and trust and will open up that conversation if someone is in that kind of place and they are having those thoughts. And that might just save their life. So mental health first aid teaches you how to do that in a crisis and how to support someone. And it's really all about spotting the signs and symptoms and then listening non-judgmentally. Let's take another question.
Thank you. Something which I've personally struggled with over the years with my mental health is actually articulating the feelings in which I have. And I've been reading this really interesting book really called The Body Keeps the Score by a psychologist, neurologist, and he talks about people that suffer from PTSD and certain parts of the brain which aren't active when someone's suffering from those problems. And there's certain things that talk therapies that, I've personally had CBT and I still suffer. And I feel like there's certain things in my life which I've kind of realized that, like exercise, and I've started yoga again, and I found that really helped. I was just curious to know, with you all guys' experience, have you ever found that, like, through your issues, you found some release through more bodily practices rather than, like, speaking as such?
Riding my bicycle and walking. I'd say that's my biggest two physical things that I do. Or riding my cruiser board and looking for skate spots when I'm not in the mood of actually skateboarding. But I will agree, yeah. Like the, CBT and everything isn't always extremely helpful. Just I get my phone's vibrating, great. But yeah, I just ride my bicycle, walk, occasionally make art, and yeah, I don't know. Trying to do more bicycle riding, but I'm not, unfortunately.
I feel like, and you tend, like when you're not feeling so good, you tend to not do much. And I think the point is doing something, then sitting there and wallowing in your own problems is the way out of those problems, you know. Move away from it and go forward instead of just staying in one place.
It's a great question. What about everyone else?
I think the coping mechanisms for everybody would be different. And I think, like you said, the physical aspects of it relating to your mental health, there definitely is a link. There's loads of research to show that. And I think one thing I could probably say is, like even through mindfulness, you can think of some physical activities, like thinking about your surroundings. And yoga is a great way for people to get back into the moment and understand, you know, exactly how they're feeling. But even breathing exercises, going out and doing breathing exercises, getting yourself connected spiritually, those are all ways to get you connected back to your own mental health and your own mental well-being. So, you know, what works for you, is really important to understand that. You may try different things, like there's art therapy that might be more best suited to you rather than CBT. Some people go through all types of therapies and they don't seem to find the right fit for them. And I think it can be difficult when you come to that end of the road where you're like, I've tried so many things and nothing seems to be working. And it is important to find out, you know, more about your identity and what's important to you. And you know, when did all this start in terms of how my mental health may have spiraled, what happened in that moment. Going back to that might make you realise more about what makes you feel better about yourself. And that's the piece of advice I'd give to that.
Yeah, I personally would say that one of the frustrating things is that when you're feeling up like shit about yourself, advice is the dangerous word in a sense, because if you take some advice and then it doesn't work, then you think like, oh shit, then I'm wrong, or that's CBT. In these films, I'm like suddenly aware that we're both sort of very much promoting CBT and you know, psychodynamic therapy and analysis as a form of a solution-based process. But no, not necessarily. CBT only works for like, I don't know what the percentage is on it, but it's quite low and stuff. So it's not like an advert for CBT or something. I think
struggling with the same problems, I guess.
I think it's just, and also like when someone like my dad, back in the day, would say something like, just have a hot chocolate and go to bed, or just like have a bath or something. It's like more frustrating, that form of advice, because it actually makes you feel more alienated. I mean, my dad's an absolute legend now, and he's learned stuff now since, you know, I took my duvet to Athens. But basically, there isn't a sort of concrete solution to it, because if there was, I would, you know, and that's often medication, psychiatry, and it's definitely like can be misguiding, because people assume like, oh yeah, just take antidepressants and it's a solution, but that just generally boosts serotonin. So I don't know, I think it's a mixture of all things, and generally feeling understood, and also it's okay to feel shit and to be wobbly, and that you don't have to find a solution like, oh, I've figured out yoga and I just bought a blender and I'm making all these juices now, because that's normally a sign of a midlife crisis, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would agree with the blender and everything like that, like being vegan for a few years, and before that being pretty health conscious regardless of drinking alcohol all the time. But if, you know, like kale and green smoothies and acai bowls and exercise was the cure to depression and anxiety, you know, my brain would look like one of the guys from Mars Attacks, you know, or I don't know, I'd be a billionaire at this point or something. But yeah, there's just no concrete solution. I would agree with that, but yeah.
I think absolutely each person's an individual. Rather than being an advert for CBT, I think what you both did was advertise that there's help out there. This is a really common problem. 1 in 4 people, as we've heard this evening, are going to have some kind of a mental health issue throughout their life. So we learn more about it. The medical professionals are learning more about it. There's loads of help, more and more available. So by talking about it is the first step to accessing some of that help, whatever will work for you. Physical exercise and physical health is really linked to mental health. So exercise, being active, can be more effective than antidepressants for people in terms of treating depression now and of warding it off in the future. I think just doing what makes you feel good and making a note of those things in the good times, so that when you do feel down, you can turn to those and find some of the things that was making you feel good, and you do feel good, because it is a tendency to stay in bed, stay under the duvet cover, and stay alone as well. So connecting with other people is something that's brilliant too. Another question?
Hello. Hello. I didn't know about the Ben Raemers Foundation. My friend brought me along to this, but it was very insightful. Depression and anxiety is something that I deal with, and I find it very hard to describe it to people. It's really hard to pinpoint. Bear with me, sorry, I'll put it in my notes on my phone.
It's hard to articulate the exact.
It's very hard. But the first lad, sorry, I've forgotten your name, but
Aaron.
The way you described it in the first section of the film is the exact depiction of how my anxiety feels and my panic attacks feel, and I'm just wondering if this video is going to be accessible after this preview, so I can show it to people, because it's worded so well by yourself, so I can just show it to people. As a way to describe how I feel.
You're talking about Nick, right?
Yeah, Nick.
Yeah,
as a way to describe how I feel, I'd like to be able to show your the way you spoke about it.
Yeah, of course, mate. And you're welcome to, we can meet up as well, talk about it, have email, and meet. I mean, I'm impressed you found that articulated, to be honest.
I do want to add to that, because if you go onto the website, even some YouTube channels around what mental health means in other people's words, they've explained it in terms of what it means to them and how it's affected them in their life. And sometimes if you're not able to maybe express it exactly how you're feeling, then listening to other people's stories may help you to write down exactly how you're feeling, and because obviously you felt relatable to what Nick was saying, and from that hopefully you can take something away from the other stories as well.
Thanks, Colsum, and thank you for sharing and asking that question. Brilliant. We're going to hear from a lady now.
Hi, so I personally went through CBT about 6 years ago, and it's something that I don't hear discussed very often. But personally, I was quite young, I was still an adolescent, and I had to wait up to 6 weeks to actually go through that therapy. And therapy is very subjective, and it really helped me, but I had to wait quite a long time to go through that. And you're both from different continents where we both have different, health systems. I'm just curious to know, as for adults, how accessible that was to you guys and how long you actually had to wait to go through CBT, or if it's something that is hard to reach, or any form of therapy, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, living in New York City, I would say that therapy and seeing a psychologist is unfortunately like a rich person thing. I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people, but like for my first psychologist visit was $275. It's $200 every time I see them, and every time I go to my therapist, they do a sliding scale because I don't have insurance, so it's like $100. But it took 4 therapists until I found the one that was the right fit. 2 psychologists until I found one that was the right fit. Granted, my first one, I freaked out on her because the receptionist literally called me crazy while I was on the phone with her, and I was like, "You calling me crazy on the phone? This is insane." But it wasn't easy in the States. It just wasn't. And I would even express that on the phone a lot of the time when I was trying to get, because I was diagnosed with being type 2 bipolar, and I was kind of like differing from or like my diagnosis and wanted something different. So when I was trying to seek that out, I was just like, why is it so hard to get this help that I'm looking for? And half the time the receptionists empathize with me and they're just like, I'm sorry, I don't know. So I mean, in the States, I'd say it was difficult, but it wasn't intimidating enough to make me stop, you know. But fortunately, there's sliding scale and things like that. And I would just say the only thing that deters me from going at times is just finances. But I think it's generally very accessible. It's easy to find as well. Like I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's basically just free group therapy, but on a different level. But like even that is something that's extremely beneficial, even if you're not even an alcoholic. I feel like honestly, it's not even about drinking most of the time. It's actually about like what we struggle with day to day. Because that's what it is. It's people that don't have any coping mechanisms anymore, and they're just struggling with what they deal with every day. And a lot of those people have mental health issues without the awareness of it. But yeah, I would say it took a while to find the right fit for me. It took some time. It also took a lot of pressure from a lot of people to get me on medication and get me onto the right things and trial and error. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
I'll say quickly that yeah, in the UK it's pretty difficult. There are resources out there, but like it's 6 months to get. If you basically NHS waiting list is about 6 months to get CBT. So if you're feeling in a crisis, it's like just gonna have to wait 6 months. It's pretty insane. So I saw someone privately through a recommendation, and I just had to spend money until I then got support later through the NHS that was cheaper. But like then you switch and then you get a different person. Obviously, it's not like you wake up in the morning and go, let's go on my laptop and find the perfect solution. Like, yeah, it's and when you're feeling shit, it's not fun. It's not the place you want to be dealing with, like working through. So it is actually quite hard, that I must admit. Yeah.
But also, I guess, add that it's funny. I guess the opposite from here to the States too, is that you can get immediate, mental health help from a clinic or a mental health clinic, whereas like trying to see somebody through a private practice then takes like 6 weeks to 6 months, and that's where like the hundreds and hundreds of dollars come into play. Whereas if you go to Bellevue Hospital, you may have to do like a 72-hour whatever, but at the end of it, you get benefits from it. But it's just kind of, it's hard. I don't know. Sorry.
No, thanks. I think I want to add to that because we obviously have the NHS services here, and what you said about the 6-week waiting list, for adolescents, I'm sure it is a lot lower, but for adults, I would say even for cognitive behavioural therapy, sometimes the waiting list is like 7 to 8 months. Even counselling services, I know they take up to 9 months to get an appointment and to see a therapist. And even the IAP service, which is psychological therapies as well, that also has a very long waiting list. However, if you look at community-based support, you can access it straight away. So Mind in Tower Hamlets and Newham, if you wanted like group support around, for example, we have like cycling groups, we have walking groups, and they're actually there's actually no waiting list for that. So you could even, if you knew somebody that wanted to get some support and you wanted to direct them to our services, then what they would do is they would come to contact us, self-referral if they wanted, and we'd do like a initial assessment. They'd speak to a navigator, and then they'd understand what services are available to them. So some of the groups that they might want to attend, if they're not ready to go into a group to share their stories, that's absolutely fine. But at least we'd be able to identify the right kind of support they would need.
So if anyone's employed and you have an employee assistance program where you work, there's a lot of fantastic help through that. Ask about help through work. For that's one option to go. There's lots of other, I think the Mind website is a great place to start. There's other access online with Skype, FaceTime, etc., calls for CBT now as well. And the NHS is trying to roll out more help to bridge that 6-week to 6-month waiting list, because those therapies can be really effective for some people, not everyone. let's get a few more questions. Maybe there's plenty up the back. Have we got a roving mic? All right, thank you.
You've spoken about the importance of sort of being a listening ear and then also starting that conversation if you know someone is suffering. But sometimes it's not as easy as that. Like I think to my relationship with my dad, like he's got depression and I do as well. And actually starting that conversation was almost impossible. I knew everything that you told me today. You know, I had awareness, I'd learned it myself, I'd been through therapy, but it's like actually starting that conversation, I couldn't do it. Whatever it was, whether it's the relationship I had with him, what would you recommend? And actually sort of bridging that gap and getting over that hurdle that you might have with someone, even if you know that they're going through that. I think it's so much easier to just ask them if they're suicidal. You know, that's actually a really hard thing to do, especially if you're suffering yourself.
Make no mistake, it's very, very difficult, very draining supporting someone who who may be having thoughts of ending their own life. It still is for me, and I've got quite a bit of experience doing it now. Having that safety and trust and building that up is what has really helped me to have a lot of conversations. My father never opened up to me, and now with the knowledge and training I have, I know he has been going through an awful lot in his life, whether it was depression, PTSD, I'm not quite sure, but he never opened up to me at all. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger. You can't be with someone 24 hours a day. You can only do what you can do. It sounds like you've done an amazing job trying to support your father and being there for him already. Could I recommend some of the talking groups around the country, not just with people we know? Has anyone heard of Andy's Man Club? A show of hands, no? If you Google those guys, there's a lot of clubs. It's not to do. No, it's not my club. No, it's not my club. They have a thing. It's okay to talk, which I do use on my social media and that. But it's started up north, really in the rugby league communities, but it's spreading all over the country from down on the south coast right up to Scotland, and that's worth Googling. It's something very like the setup for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a talking group. You pass a ball around and talk about what's going on for you. And I think that's a key message. It's just part of normal life, mental health. As we go through life, we'll all have challenges. Is anyone else on the panel anything they'd like to say on that question?
I briefly worked for like a charity called SMiLe, which is quite interesting just because you can speak on the phone to people. And often like when they talk to us about it, they said like you'll speak to a lot of people that are talking about someone else. Like, so you might be talking about your dad, but they'll focus on you. And actually that can just be super like helpful just because like, I don't know, it's just fucking so hard to deal with like your dad feeling like that and then you feel shit as well. Then someone actually is talking to you about how you feel and you can get some of that off your chest. It gives you a bit more space to see things from probably more of a refreshed like point of view or something. So it's called SMiLe. It could be helpful.
Can I just add, do you think you'd be comfortable enough to talk about, discuss what you've learnt today and going back to your dad now with all this and, you know, what you're taking back? Do you think you'd be comfortable to talk to him about that?
To be honest, no. I don't know. I could instigate that conversation, but you just end up butting heads. Like,
yeah.
I think of depression and it makes you a really selfish person.
Yeah.
When you've got two people who have that, you kind of react with anger, at least I have with him, anytime that conversation comes up.
I hope
it's like you just get frustrated at each other. You're like, almost like we used to fight so much about it.
Yeah.
Even though we're both hating ourselves, and then that comes out as just like clashing like that. I think that, I don't know, it's almost like I'm an outsider. I don't know who to go to. Who would I go to speak to about that? I couldn't go to his mates. Like, I think I'm worried about my dad. I don't know his mates. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's actually really, of course, there's only so much you can do yourself, but then also who do you go to? Yeah. Like you're saying, he should go and get help elsewhere, but he's like a stubborn old man, stiff upper lip. He doesn't talk to anyone about it, let alone me.
Yeah.
So that's so much easier said than done, and I think that can go sort of to people here. Like, we're looking at guys in skating, and when you look at something like the NHS waiting time, if you're feeling that way, you know, sometimes you don't want to talk about stuff, and like trying to get that out of people is so hard, even if you notice it. And then you add on top, they're trying to get help and they don't have the financial stability to go private.
Yeah.
You know, what are they supposed to do? That's why when things go wrong, when they're just desperate and they're floundering around, and people probably know about what's going on, but it's like you can't get that out of them, and that people don't know how to have that conversation as well, you know, and that's where things get really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I'd suggest is encouraging your father to go and see his GP. There may be physical health problems going on as well. GP surgery, I know my father didn't like going to the doctor. A lot of guys don't. But that has a lot more safety and trust there built into that relationship. It's tend to be thought of, the four walls are confidential, and getting professional help with this, as we've seen in the two films, is fantastic, because the GP is able to look at the whole health picture, not just the mental health. That's one suggestion I'd make. World Health Organization have a great video as well, animated video. You can search for it on YouTube. It's called I Had a Black Dog. His name was Depression. There's another one linked to that, which is great as well for supporting someone with depression. I got my wife to watch it, and she thought it was incredibly helpful. And that's Living with a Black Dog. So a lot of the resources out there help people who are trying to support someone with a condition, as well as just the person themselves with a condition. But it's a really difficult example and situation you find yourself in when you're trying to help someone else that you care about with the same difficulties and problems that you're having. Come and have a chat to us afterwards if you want as well. Yeah, great question, thank you.
I'd say also, from my point of view, it seems like you're having to deal with so much shit that you should definitely look into getting some support for yourself. I know it sounds a bit like maybe patronizing or something, but just like that might help you take a bit of pressure off, because if you're the son of someone that you care about so much, you're going to spend so much energy trying to try and help them as much as you can, but that can be just never ending, and then that'll just fuel your sadness. So in a way, it might just be nice to get a bit of objectivity and go and speak to someone about how it feels to be in that struggle.
Yeah, I would like to add that this is for me almost more of an example. Like, I've come to a point of acceptance with this. I know that I can only do so much, but I just wanted to share it just in case there was other people. Yeah. This is the example I have, and I know that a lot, particularly when it comes to sort of like relationships with friends, how do you bridge that gap? Especially through skating, you know, sometimes you're not best mates, but you know them, you see them down the skate park, but you're not at that point where you feel like you can have that chat with them. So I more raised it because of that. You know, I have sought help. I'm dealing with all that stuff already. You know.
And I'll add to that as well. Sorry not to have bad timing. I was just going to agree with Lucy and Nick, is that like my mother struggles with a lot of stuff. She got kidnapped when she was 20 and still around. But I've watched my mother go through like severe depression and like depressive states and, you know, marriages and things like that. And something that, you know, my whole life I was always like, Mom, like, you know, you're dealing with depression, like you're dealing with depression. She's like, no, I'm not. Like, and just would argue with me over the matter. And I'm like, well, you're such a depressive person. And then that would get turned into her becoming defensive. So literally other than for myself, but part of the therapy that I changed going into from psychoanalysis into DBT into CBT was so I could understand how to communicate my emotions better with my loved ones and understand like how they were trying to communicate with me when I was pressing the issue and they weren't having it. Or like me and my mother, unfortunately, it's the same thing. It turns into fight and hatred because I don't love myself, she doesn't love herself. We're trying to love each other, but there's something in the way. But I would say definitely like if you get outreach for yourself, it'll help you with like the understanding and the communication. So.
One final question then. The chap with the great beard and the b-ball cap, yeah. We've got a microphone up that way. Thank you. It's coming across.
So it's to the skateboarders up there. How much do you think your local skate shop helped you with mental health when you went to their place and just talked to the people who owned it and just hung out with them?
Me personally, James Revelinski at Labor Skate Shop in New York. I mean, a lot of the times before I really like understood what I was going through, and I was just like kind of spewing out my thoughts. He was very, very patient and very, insightful for whatever I was, babbling about that day or just kind of spewing out my thoughts. But he definitely helped me and gave me like a place at times where I felt like I could safely vent to somebody. And skating for his shop and him being my friend definitely gave me a person in a place where I felt comfortable and didn't feel like I was being judged. Even if there was other skaters in there, I didn't ever feel weird to talk about it because I was like, I'm talking to this one person, and if 5 other people hear me, I don't care because it's not for them. Even if it causes them to judge me, it's just like I'm talking to him. But so I thought it was always helpful having that, indeed. So.
I mean, I think again from like my personal experiences as a young person and my parents getting divorced and just literally being out on the streets, I feel again like the skate shop was a place of community, right? Regardless of like whether it was the owner or the older guys that were around. Like for myself, it was a time where I could be taken away from those problems and be whisked off to like a good session or watch a skate video in the shop, and just a time of forgetting my problems for a few hours. And I think, these days, skate shops are few and far between. They should be the hub of the community. They should just stay that way forever. And, I think that's down to us as well to keep that there.
Yeah, I think you guys can make a real difference. You've been a fantastic audience. Would you agree? Questions, involvement, what people have shared has just been fantastic. Thank you. I do a few of these things and we don't often get as much engagement. I think you are part of the culture. We all are. The more we can accept others, keep the conversation going, will really make a difference. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass the mic back to Lucy.
I just want to say it has been so overwhelming tonight and amazing. Everyone here, it's ridiculous what's happened. This bastard's ruling my life, but I love him dearly, and it's amazing the support and getting people talking. I think that's the problem. Benny didn't talk enough, and if it's one thing we can do with the foundation, get people talking. If I can save one sister, it's going to be amazing. I love you all and thank you so, so much. You're amazing, all the amazing panel. Rob, look at him. Isn't he beautiful? My amazing cousin Francesca, Susie, I fucking love you. And all of you, thank you so much. Thank you. Andy, you're a genius.